Hello! Welcome to Bloody Good. My name is Montgomery and I've been a fan of horror my whole life.
And I'm Emily and I've just been dipping my toes into the genre lately.
And this is Old versus New, where we take a look at the original and remake of a horror movie.
And we decide which is best using our P.H.L.E.G.M Vibes model. This includes plot,
horror,
location,
ensemble,
gore,
music,
and most importantly,
vibes.
For each category, we'll both be given each film a score out of 5 and we'll total it all up at the end and decide scientifically, definitively, which is the best version.
Today we'll be looking at two films that take a look at how a small town fights back against the government after they accidentally release a deadly disease that goes throughout the town. Today we're looking at The Crazies.
Trixie. It's designed to destabilize a population. In this case, the wrong one.
We've quarantined the area, we're sealing off the town.
Now, starting with the original, I love the plot of this film. I still stand by this is one of the most unique horror films I've ever seen. I think it's so interesting to see both how people are surviving this virus and also how the government is trying to keep it contained. As well, with the disease itself, some people are killer, crazed people, and other people are just a bit loopy. And as the situation unravels and gets more intense, it's hard to tell who's actually infected and who's just sort of losing their rag. Now in the remake, we only see the perspective from the survivors. We do later on in the film meet some government agents who talk about the virus and we learn about what Trixie is. However, they're played as very sort of one-note villains. Whilst in the original film, it was a lot more shades of grey. No one was truly good. The film moves quite quickly for the first and second act, but I find the sort of third act, once they actually get out of town, the film really drags. Now for the original, I'm going to give it a 5, which might seem high to some people, but I stand by this is one of the most unique takes on a horror genre I've ever seen. So often we just see the survivors on the ground, but actually seeing the government bureaucracy side and how they're trying to contain it and handle it just makes for such an interesting plot. Now the remake, on the other hand, it's fun, it's entertaining, but it's also paint by numbers, and as I said, it really does slow down that third act. So I'm probably going to give the remake a 3 out of 5.
For me, I really enjoy the plot of the original. I think it deals with the outbreak really well and the chaos that just comes with that and the panic that the military has and the general public has. And I think it's all handled really well. And there is just this dread that fills the whole film. And I think it works just really well for an older film. I really like the opening of the remake as well. I think it gets straight into the action and straight into the horror as well. Just all on fire and chaotic. And then we cut to 2 days earlier and we get to kind of piece together what's going on. And I just really like the whole plot. I don't think it adds a lot to the original, but I equally don't think it takes away a lot either. I think it's a nice balance compared to the original. So I'm giving the original a 4 and I'm giving the remake a 4.
So for the horror, I think the opening does an amazing job. Seeing that dad crazy is genuinely very terrifying. There's like one specific shot of him just before he's shown the flashlight where you're just seeing like the glimmer of his pupils, and it genuinely is one of the most scary shots I've seen in a horror film. And the government men in white suits going through green lush fields and walking through small town Americana is such striking imagery. There's something very visceral that you know it shouldn't be there. And the quarantine areas in the school where we see these crowded rooms full of crazed people is just so unnerving. There's also some great scenes with the military, such as the old lady stabbing the man with their knitting needle as he crawls away with the yarn still attached to him. Just beautiful. Now when it comes to the remake, I think it does horror in a very different way. I think it does some really good shock horror. Now, we'll get more into it in the gore because that's how it presents a lot of it across, but you do have some great things like the giant piece of farm machinery with the lights on is just horrifying image. But the jump scares, the horror, the gore was very well done in the movie, but it was also very cliche. As an avid horror watcher myself, there was nothing new there when I was watching it. The original, I'm going to give it a 4. The horror in that really sticks with you. There's some really great imagery in that I just can't get out of my head. And the remake is probably going to be closer to a 3. I enjoyed it, but I haven't really given it the time of day since watching it.
With the original, I'm just immediately off guard and scared by the children in the house. Before anything scary had even happened, I just didn't like the vibe that they were giving off. And then I was proven correctly with the whole house set on fire. But the thing that really gets me in this film is the hazmats with the gas masks. I just have a thing with gas masks, and it's Doctor Who's fault. I watched The Empty Child when I was very young and it terrified me. And now whenever I think of a gas mask, I think of that. The way the characters in hazmats are used are also pretty horrific. I think the really stark contrast between the white suits and the green grass in the forest is really creepy because it just looks so out of place and it just gets your back up because it doesn't feel right. And there is, unfortunately, an incestuous scene. Now, both the characters are crazy. They do have the virus, so they don't know what they're doing. But it's still really uncomfortable to watch that all happen, so yeah, pretty horrific. In terms of the remake, I think it just goes straight into the horror. As you see the man walking along the baseball field, you don't know what he's holding straight away, but just the way he's walking is really off-putting and really scary to me personally, at least. And this film is just pretty non-stop with the horror, I'll be honest. There's lots of gross stuff going on. I won't go into too much detail here because a lot of it will be featured in the gore category later. But it's pretty horrific. I think there's something to be said about the horror of the darkness, and you know, some might call it basic, but I think there's a reason people are scared of the dark. It's something prehistoric. It's one of those fears that has been passed down generation after generation. We're scared of the dark. You don't know what's in it. It's the unknown. And I think this film uses that really well, especially when it's kind of a barn at the end of the garden where you're not really sure what's going on, and then something's loud or something's bright, and it's just jarring. I don't know what the machine's called. It's like a combine harvester thing, but that thing running in the barn with the bright lights on and the noise was really startling to me, and I didn't like it. But it's good horror, and maybe it's because I'm a bit of a novice with horror, but that scared me, so I have to give it credit for that. So for horror, I'm giving the original 3 and the remake 4.
Keep them somewhere else. Keep them isolated. Yes, sir. We're using the gymnasium for anything.
Now, I really do like the setting and location of the original. I think the small town is really iconic, and sort of seeing the soldiers walk through, as I said, is just really great imagery. I like as well the sort of temporary office they set up, where they're setting up UV lights. And we do spend a lot of time in generic forests, which do eat up a lot of the runtime. I think the ending in the sort of concrete block workshop area is a really cool place to end the film. And as said, the school quarantine zone is just amazing. No notes. Now, the remake has a bigger budget and it does show. We see a lot more locations. We see the sheriff's office, we see his house, we see the small town, there's a gas station near the end, and a massive quarantine zone. Frankly, too big. I don't understand how the military were able to set up so quickly without anyone in the town realizing. But it is some really cool iconography and areas to show, and it feels like they traverse so much further throughout the film. So for the original, I'm probably going to land closer to a 3. It did really set up these areas and locations that the remake ran with, but I would have liked to see a bit more variety. And the remake's probably going to be a 4.
Now for the original, I quite like the location. I don't think it's anything special, but I think it does the job in terms of this film. It's a quiet, quaint little town, but nothing strikes me as a really great set piece or anything amazing that happens. You've got the small little town, you've got the forest, you've got the school as well that's being used as a quarantine zone, and that's really chaotic and quite different to all the other locations in the film. It's quite dramatic, it's hectic, but nothing strikes me as like, oh my god, that was an amazing set piece. I think the location works really well in the remake as well. You still see it's this little town, but I think it's got a lot of charm, and even though it's quite quiet, it's bustling in its own way. Like I said, the promenade with the shops on either side of the street, I think is a really nice set piece. And it works both when everything's fine and when everything has gone to absolute shit. I really like all the other places we visit throughout the film as well. The marshes, and there's a great shot of the camera kind of zooming up towards the sky, and you see the huge airplane underneath the boat in the marsh. And like I said before with the horror, there's lots of just dark, gross locations here, and they all work for me because they make me scared. And, you know, that's what a horror film is supposed to do. And I think the locations really elevate that in this film. So I'm giving the original 3 out of 5, and I'm giving the remake 4.
I'm gonna go get her. Oh, fucking yeah, let's go to the high school.
Now, in the original, just off the bat, I really enjoy how the main characters are volunteer firefighters. I think it says a lot about the type of characters they are, as well as I think it's just a really interesting profession to have in a sort of apocalyptic situation, and quite underused in my opinion. You know these characters are going to be brave and physically fit, which makes them ideal for the situation they find themselves in. I love Colonel P.H.L.E.G.M and Dr. Watts. I think they're really interesting characters. I love Colonel P.H.L.E.G.M just slowly crashing out, rightfully so, for the sort of situation he finds himself in, as well as Dr. Watts, his sort of baritone voice, his self-confidence. We get a lot of really nice scenes of him, and I think his character's undoing at the end, falling down the stairs due to his own hubris. It's just great. Now, I have saved the best till last. I fucking love Clanker. Clanker might be one of my favourite characters in all of horror. The man is just guns to the wall crazy from the start, which is really good because you can't tell when he is actually infected. But he's on it from the start. The man is ride or die to the very, very end. Now, for the remake, I don't love that he's a sheriff. I think it gives a bit more agency having a sheriff and deputy because they sort of have a bit more of a responsibility to keep people safe, but I do think it's a bit of a cliche. Maybe this is because I watch a lot of Walking Dead, but I'm sort of tired of that profession, and I think there's more interesting ones out there, as I said with the volunteer firefighters. Now, I do enjoy Russell, and he's got some amazing facial hair, but he's no Clanker. But he is a very enjoyable character, although I do think he goes crazy a little bit too early. It's not as nuanced as the original film. He sort of just goes balls to the wall very quickly from 0 to 100. I also think the soldiers aren't really humanized as much. We have a very brief scene where they take one of the soldiers hostage in the barn and we find out he's just a kid. But the soldiers in the original all felt like real people. A lot of them you could hear through dialogue that they were actually like scared of the crazies they're encountering. Whilst they're kind of just faceless goons in the remake, and the suits are nowhere near as cool. I also think Timothy Olyphant gave a bit of a boring performance, dare I say. I really like Timothy Olyphant, but I think he was sort of very bland as this character. It felt very much like a self-insert for the viewer. There's one scene where he's in the car wash where he's sort of crashing out at everyone, and it's beautiful, and I would have loved to see him sort of that high rung and that stress throughout the entire film, because then I think it would also be interesting because you wouldn't know if he was also losing the plot. But he's serviceable, what can I say? So for the original, and this was really just because of Clanker, I'm giving it a 5. Which might sound ridiculous, but you gotta watch it for Clanker. He might just be the best character in all cinema. The remake has enjoyable characters, but none that really stick out to me, so probably gonna keep it at a 3.
For me, for the original, there's no one that stands out in the main cast as like an exceptional character. Clanker is pretty funny and quite a cool character, but not anything incredible to me personally, but he's the best of the main characters we're given. I don't really gel with the couple, and I don't find their chemistry all that believable. But for me, where the ensemble shines is all these random background characters. It's all the men in the hazmat suits. There's a great scene of one of them taking fishing poles off the wall and kind of looking around as if like, well, if no one's gonna stop me, I'm gonna take these. And there's little character moments like that that I find really interesting in the background of this film. There's also a random lady sweeping up the grass. She's obviously crazy. And it's those little character moments that make this for me, as opposed to the main cast. Also, we just need to look at this guy's wig, because what is that? It does not look believable, and I want to know who let that be on screen and didn't question it. Now with the remake, I do obviously have to talk about Timothy Olyphant. I love him as an actor. I've watched quite a few things with him in, and I think he's a really funny actor. I wish he'd had a bit more chance at humour in this. The car wash scene is quite a highlight for me for his performance. He's just really losing his rag, and he's at his tether, and I kind of wish he'd played it more like that throughout the whole film, but I do enjoy that little snippet we get there. And in terms of the rest of the cast, I don't think anyone else puts in like an incredible performance, but I think they're a good enough supporting cast. I think our main couple, they are believable to me as a couple, and I do like the relationship between the sheriff and the deputy. I think it's a believable little buddy cop kind of stuff, and they have their banter, they have the serious moments, and I quite like it. So for the original, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5, and the remake, I'm giving it 4.
God damn it!
Now, with the original, with George A. Romero's name attached, I did expect a lot more gore. I'm a massive fan of George A. Romero, love almost all of his films. However, this film was surprisingly reserved with the gore. Now, I personally love the beet bright red of the blood. I think it's really fun. I love the color grading in general in this film. I think it just is so stark in contrast compared to the remake, where it's a little dull, in my opinion. But it's not that many gore scenes to speak of. I mean, Clanker has a beautiful headshot we see, which if you slow it down enough, you can see the fishing wire being pulled. However, there's not much else to speak of. The soldiers getting shot and seeing the blood come from them has a great contrast with the white suits. I did forget about this one great head explosion. That was pretty good. Now, the remake definitely has some great gore. You've got the bloated corpse of the pilot. You've got the priest with his eyes and lips sewn shut, which is literally just on that line of sort of torture porn and like Saw-esque, which I don't love, but this was enough for me. I think a big measure for gore for me is if I have a visceral reaction when watching it. And that scene when Timothy Olyphant gets his hand stabbed through with a knife, just great. Picks it up with the knife still in hand, stabs the lady in the neck. Just a great moment of cinema, frankly. Now, the original, as I said, didn't have as much gore as I would have loved, and maybe it's not that kind of movie where it needs it. But this is the P.H.L.E.G.M scale, so I have to rate it, and unfortunately that's going to be a 2. Now, the remake, on the other hand, it does have some beautiful moments. I would love to see, I don't know, maybe just a bit more, maybe some more practical effects, but it's probably going to be a 4. It's just some great moments. And like I said, if you can give me a visceral moment when watching, hats off, hats off.
For the original here, there's not much going on in terms of gore. I wasn't like horrified by anything, which I think says something, because I'm quite easily horrified by gross stuff, and nothing really did it for me here. The exception being when Clanker unfortunately bites the dust. And it's quite a gross looking shot. But other than that, there's not really anything I'd say was particularly gory or gruesome. And I think a big part of that for me is the blood. I just do not like the colour of the blood at all. And I had this problem with the original Dawn of the Dead as well. It's just too vibrant, it's too neon red. Now for the remake, I think there is so much to talk about for gore. I'm not going to rattle on about every single thing because I could be here for a very long time. But I'm going to talk about some highlights. For me, the thing that really grossed me out, made me kind of genuinely, my skin crawl and I shivered a bit, it was the priest with his eyes and his mouth sewn up. That's a big thing for me. I don't like eyes, anything happening with eyes, and that was disgusting to have to watch. So, you know, credits to that. As Monty said, there's a scene where David gets the knife through his hand into the floor, and he has to pry his hand off the floor, and then he slashes the woman's throat with the knife still in his hand. Disgusting, but it made me recoil because it was so disgusting. So for the original, I'm giving it a 2, and the remake, I'm giving it the full 5.
For the original, there's not a lot to say when it comes to the music, in my opinion. The original soundtrack throughout doesn't really do much for me. There's a very strange choice, a sort of opera, Aretha Franklin type ending song, but other than that, there's nothing notable. Clanker's death scene has, you know, maybe a cool-ish music score, but other than that, there's nothing really that sticks around, which is surprising for me because George Romero, for better or for worse, he makes choices that last when it comes to music, typically, as we sort of said in our Dawn of the Dead video, but for this, yeah, I can't really remember anything that stuck with me. Now, this is tough. If I had a nickel for every time a remake of a George A. Romero film opened with a Johnny Cash song, I'd have 2. Which isn't a lot, but it's strange it happened twice. Now, I'm a big country music guy. I'm a big any music guy. I have no real genre I stick my flag into, but I do love country music, and fuck, I love some Johnny Cash, so that really does put it up there. There's not really much else that, score-wise, that I like in this film. Russell's death scene, kind of similar to Clanker, has a good score, interestingly enough, but everything else is just sort of serviceable. It's fine. And there's an interesting music choice at the end I'm sure Emily will expand on, but for me, Johnny Cash is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. So for the original, and this is my non-biased, I'm having to be honest here, it's gonna be a 1. And I am sorry, because I do love George A. Romero's music choices normally, but yeah, this isn't it for me. The remake, it's a 5, just for Johnny Cash alone. I'm so sorry. I put that music in any movie and it puts it up there for me.
For the original, there's not that much to talk about for music. There's not really anything that stands out particularly well. Just quite a mellow film in terms of music. Now, the remake opens with Johnny Cash, just like the remake of Dawn of the Dead does, and you can't go wrong there. It's just a great way to start a film. Otherwise, it sounds like your just kind of generic action movie soundtrack. Nothing really stands out particularly in this film either. It's serviceable, it does the job, and it kind of ambles the story along, and I think it does kind of crescendo up at important points, but otherwise there's not a whole lot going on here either. So I am giving the original 2, and I'm giving the remake 4.
Authorize me out of here. Screw the orders. Get me out of here.
Now, on a budget of $275,000, this film has such like cool lo-fi nature. George Romero is quite famous for sort of letting his actors kind of do what they want to a degree, which means you just get really organic and natural chemistry, which I think works so well for this film. I also just love the fashion. I'm a big 1970s fashion fan, so basically all the outfits here did it for me. I love the like military utility belts that they took off the soldiers. I think it just looks sick. As well as, and I keep talking about it, the white hazmat suits just look amazing. It boggles my mind that the remake went for these really boring orange and green looks. They just don't stand out and they blend into the background. I also think the color grading of the original, like with a really stark contrast. I mean, some people might hate it, but I personally just love it. Now, the remake is fun. I can't deny that. But I think it's serviceable. It does feel like a very 2010s movie, but it's not always a bad thing, I guess. I think, and I feel like I'll probably get some hate for this, but I gotta give the original 5. There is just like a vibe that film has, which is just purely unmatched. Also, remake, I'll probably lean more towards a 3. It's fun, it's serviceable, but again, I don't find myself thinking about it as much when the film ends.
For the original, I think there's pretty good pacing going on, considering it's a 70s film, and my big issue with Dawn of the Dead is that it goes on forever, what feels like forever. It's 2 hours, but it feels like 7. Whereas this one, it's quite choppy, it's quite paced quickly, and I like that. It moves along nicely, and you're not left waiting and thinking, oh God, is this ever going to end? But there's this scene where a character is talking, and in the background there's just flashes of like military footage and propaganda. And it's just really thought-provoking, and it really made me think. And I was still thinking about it for a long time afterwards. It's been days and I'm still thinking about it. So I think that has to stand for something here. And for the remake, I've kind of got the same argument I had for the remake of Dawn of the Dead. It's just got that snappy pacing that a 2000s or a 2010s film has. I like the way this film flows, and it works well for me. And I think there's a lot to love about this film personally. While some, including Monty, might call it just your basic 2010 movie, I think it's got a lot of heart in it, and I do really enjoy it. So I'm giving the original a 3 and the remake a 4.
Well, you've heard from both of us. Now it's time to add up the scores and see categorically, scientifically, and factually what is the best film.
I think this one might cost you your job.
Oh, and there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. The remake with 54 out of 70 and the original with 44 out of 70. Look, I don't like it. The original is my favourite, but the P.H.L.E.G.M Vibes scale is scientifically correct. However, if you disagree with us, you can argue with us in the comments.
If you want to be super detailed about it, why don't you write down your own scores for each of the categories and let us know how you'd rank it.
Hey, did you enjoy this video and maybe agree with our opinions? It's fine if not. You might enjoy our video as well where we rated Dawn of the Dead using the P.H.L.E.G.M scale as well. Find out categorically which is better, the remake or the original.